We are now live, Chair.
Right, thank you, John. Welcome everybody to the first meeting of the Housing and Homelessness panel for this municipal year. This meeting is a meeting in public, so we are being streamed live on YouTube, on the council's YouTube account. So if everybody could please bear that in mind, that what you are saying is in the public domain, and everything we're discussing here is in the public domain. Thank you. As this is the first meeting, I think it would be nice if we just go around and for members of the panel and officers and any guests we've got with us right now to introduce themselves, if that's okay. Should we just go across the screen as I'm looking at it? John, would you like to kick off?
Thank you. I'm here as technical host this evening. Thank you.
Yeah, so my name's Linda Smith. I'm councillor for Lythe Valley, and I'm the chair of the Housing and Homelessness panel. Tom.
So I'm Tom Hudson. I'm the scrutiny officer.
Wendy.
Hi, I'm Wendy. Hi, Tenant Involvement Officer, Oxford City Council.
Thanks for coming, Wendy. Liz.
You're on mute, Liz.
I'm so sorry, I should have learnt by now. I'm Liz Wade, I'm councillor for Wolvercote.
Thanks. Richard.
My name is Richard Wood. I'm the Strategy and Service Development Manager in Housing Services.
Mike, good to see you here.
Mike Crowley, Cabinet Member for Citizen Focused Services, covering Oxford Direct Services, housing repairs and maintenance, and decarbonisation, I believe, is on the agenda.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Nadine.
Hi, my name is Nadine Bayes. I'm as Council for Little Moor. Hi.
Nadine. Tony.
Yeah, my name's Tony. I'm part of the Housing and Homeless Scrutiny Panel, and also I'm a member of the Housing Ombudsman Resident Scrutiny Panel.
Thank you. Anthony.
I'm Anthony Church. I'm a tenant ambassador, and I'm currently working with the Great Estates team for Oxford City Council.
Thank you. Chris. We can't hear you, Chris. You're coming off mute, but we can't hear you. Do you want to? We'll come back. Lizzie.
Lizzie Diggins, councillor for Carfax and Jericho.
And Lawrence. You've got mute. The same. You've got. Yeah, you're on mute. No, he's got
Sorry
the same problem
that.
as. Okay, you're back. Yeah, we can hear you now.
Councillor Lawrence Farrer, the City Councillor for Cutslow and Sunnymead.
Great. Stephen.
Hi, I'm Stephen Clark, and I'm Head of Housing Services. And Linda Deco should be joining us in a minute. We've just finished on a previous meeting. She just need to nip to the bathroom.
Simon.
Simon Ward, Tenant Involvement Manager at Oxford City Council.
Thanks, Simon. Olga. Is Olga there?
Hello. Hello, sorry, my door went. I am Olga Siddons, and I'm a new ambassador for the Tenant Involvement. Good to meet you all.
Yeah, thanks for coming. And Brenda.
Yes, hello, my name's Brenda Walton. I'm, again, one of the tenant ambassadors.
Thanks for coming tonight, Brenda. Good to hear your voice. Okay, let's move on to item 1 on the agenda, which is apologies. So we've not received any apologies other than from Councillor Blackings for lateness, which have just been conveyed. 2, declarations of interest. So this is just mainly for the councillors on the panel. Are there any declarations of interest that anyone would like to make? No, I don't see any. So we're on to the housing panel work plan. This has been circulated with the agenda. So this is the proposal from officers. There are some further updates we need to make to this. There's a report going to Cabinet on small sites in the council's ownership, which could possibly have potential for affordable housing development. And I think that is something that this panel would probably like to look at. I think that those will include sites like the derelict garages and unused garages that we've got on some of our estates, which been vacant for some time, and I think that that's quite a pressing issue that we move forward with putting those to good use. And another item which we need to consider is the motion passed at last month's full council meeting on DSS discrimination. Tom, would you like to tell us how we might deal with those two items as part of this work plan?
Sure. So essentially, if we add the small sites item to the November meeting agenda, that's absolutely fine. And what I propose with the DSS discrimination motion stuff is that we simply, right now, remind housing that it has been passed and that there were a number of actions taken, actions requested, and that we will ask in April for our April meeting for an update report on how those items are being progressed. So if we put it on the agenda for the April meeting.
Yeah, so I certainly support that approach. Are all members of the panel in agreement with that? Would anyone like to make any alternative suggestions or dissent? If not, I'll take it that we agree that. Liz?
I was just wondering whether we'll actually have an April meeting, because it'll be getting close to the elections then, won't it? So
I have given thought to this, and given that it was a cross-party motion and it's an update report, I don't think it would fall foul of PERDA because it's just an update on what the council has been doing. And the other thing is that we will be doing a write-up of this tenant engagement continuing theme, and that will need to be signed off in April. So we will need to have a meeting in April to do that. So I have noted that there's a possibility of it, but I don't think that will happen.
Okay, thanks very much.
Nadine.
Myself. Yes, no, thank you very much for that, Tom and Linda. But I wondered if we could add on the plan reporting on private landlords licensing, something we discussed at the previous panel, and I wondered if there was any follow-up from that.
I think that's a topic of. That's an area of very active work by the council, isn't it? So, as we get closer to a scheme being adopted, it would need to go through cabinet to approve a scheme. So I think we would certainly want to look at any cabinet report before it was agreed.
Yes, that is the approach that I've taken. That a number of things that scrutiny has suggested we might want to look at are not currently on the work plan, because having chatted with members of staff responsible, there will subsequently be things coming up as cabinet papers, and it's silly to get them to write a special report for the housing panel when actually we'll get an update coming to cabinet.
Yeah, so I think that's something we will want to follow very closely, and any papers that are coming forward on that, proposals that are coming forward on that, we would want to discuss them here. Is that okay, Nadine? Yeah. Any other comments?
Could I just make one, Linda, please?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Just a suggestion in terms of you were looking for a report back on the tenant survey to October. What I'm requesting is that we slip that a cycle and then bring forward the social housing item to the October meeting. Two reasons. One is we want to do some further work on an action plan arising from the results of the tenant survey, but we're also wanting to look to get some more information about how we compare with other similar landlords, you know, of similar landlords, because at the moment we've only got comparisons around all social housing providers, and it's not really a very good comparison. So we're trying to get a comparison around a group of peers, peer local authorities. So if you're comfortable with that, I think that would be a more, and then what's likely to come out of that, Chair, is that there'll be some suggestions around some further investment in council housing, and then we could feed that into the budget setting process if that, so I think it fits better, Chair. So with your permission, could we slip it to cycle, yeah?
So just to be clear, you're suggesting that we bring that forward, the work on the social housing white paper?
Yeah, so we bring the social housing white paper to replace the one on the tenant survey, yeah? So the tenant survey will come in November. The social housing white paper will come in October.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds welcome to me. And Tom is putting his thumbs up. Are panel members content with that? Yeah, not seeing any dissent. So yeah, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's move on to item 4, which is the notes of the last meeting. I think obviously we were a new panel, but Nadine and Liz were at that meeting. But can we agree those notes?
Yes. Yep.
Looking to Nadine and Liz, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. They're agreed. So that takes us on to the first sort of substantial item, item 5. Where are we?
That's the performance one, Chair, that Richard's going to look after initially.
Yep, the performance indicators. So we've got Richard here to introduce the report. Richard is a strategy and service development manager at the council. So thank you for coming. Richard, over to you. Let's hear from you and then ask the panel if they've got any questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Chair. Yes, so as you say, the report that comes under my name is just an update around performance of housing services in particular, but also other housing related functions in the City Council. We put it all into one for the panels to see. And I just thank colleagues from across the council for contributing towards this report. I'll just run through the kind of headlines perhaps, and then we can have a discussion and questions. So starting with maybe homelessness and rough sleeping. A very kind of challenging context at the moment in Q1, but throughout the pandemic, obviously widely understood that the council's been delivering everybody in for rough sleepers through the pandemic, and now we're increasingly turning to the decant of that accommodation and moving people on successfully. At the same time, it's also been a prolonged period of strain on statutory services, you know, from increased presentations, but also through to increased placement to temporary accommodation. The pandemic has had that impact. Over Q1, we also saw the end of the eviction ban in May, and we're now moving to obviously the furlough ending and the end of the UC uplift. And I just bring that to the panel's attention because it's the context that's currently homelessness and rough sleeping services are operating in, which I think is important. Despite those significant challenges, it's been a quarter of success on most of these measures. I won't repeat a lot of what I've already put in the report that the panel can see, but obviously a lot of it concerns around moving out of Canterbury House and working with our partners to successfully secure move-on accommodation for everyone who's been housed there. And at the time the report was sent to the panel, we had 252 successful move-ons from everybody in, which is a considerable challenge and one that we've met. Just updating the panel on what's happened since the report. On July the 19th, we still so we had 11 people able to stay at the accommodation as we secured 4 additional weeks at Canterbury House, but all those people have now successfully been moved on. So we've now exited Canterbury House. And there are a few people we put temporarily in hotel rooms to ensure they don't return to the street, but they'll also be moved on successfully in the next 2 weeks. So real success. And we now turn our attention to the YHA, which is the remaining everybody in site. More broadly around rough sleeping, and we've also had another successful award of the RSI funding from central government to continue to support our work around rough sleeping. A lot of that money this year will go on continuing services that we've been delivering over the last few years, but things such as navigators around homelessness to help people be rehoused and to prevent them from homelessness, but also funding for a social lettings pilot to allow access for rough sleepers to the private rented sector. Turning purely to the KPIs, this year we do have an updated methodology around rough sleeping. Traditionally, we had an annual count that we reported on corporately and delivered to the panel. We can now update the panel quarterly on this, so you should provide a more accurate and up-to-date view on rough sleeping in the city. Last year we came out at 26 on the reported count on that KPI, down from 62 the year previous. With that in mind and our continued ambition, we've now moved that target down further to 17 this year. As of Q1, we were at 24 in June in the city, which, while not 17, continues the gradual decline in rough sleeping numbers we've seen through the pandemic. And traditionally, summer is a period where there is more rough sleeping because of many reasons, but we are aware, for example, of some people who are rough sleeping at the moment who do have accommodation, which might end once the weather doesn't get so good. So we believe we're on track at that at the moment, although obviously the decants from both Canterbury House and then the YHA later on will be a challenge, both because of the successful move on that we need from there, but then no longer being able to place into that accommodation. Just quickly on wider homelessness KPIs, we're both in target on the temporary accommodation KPI with 96 up against a target of 110, which is a really good outcome in light of increased placements. And on a new KPI that we developed this year, where we track the quality of our work around homelessness prevention, we set a target of 55% successful outcomes from prevention duties the council has. And from Q1, we actually achieved 79.6%, which was really positive. Moving on to other areas of the council's work around housing, on affordable development, we have a new KPI this year. Traditionally, we only reported with yearly targets on affordable development, and there was feedback from panel and elsewhere that wasn't particularly able to drive performance in this area, because obviously house building is so long term, strategically and even operationally. Within a year, by that point, planning's been secured. Often it's work on site's already begun. So we've now moved to a new target, which is a 4-year target of, it's been set at 1,200 affordable homes delivered by 24-25, and within that 750 social homes. That also corresponds with the corporate plan and the budget setting process, the MTFP. So it should be a more strategic target going forward, and we'll obviously be able to provide quarterly updates on progress against that. This quarter, the first quarter we've reported on, we've delivered 49 affordable homes, although that's in partnership obviously with housing associations. That isn't just directly through the City Council and OCHL. And of those 49, 48 were charged at a social rent. And that is above where we were last year, where in the whole year we delivered 123. So a good first quarter there. Finally, I'll just touch on the council-owned stock, and the main area there is the new KPI around decarbonisation and energy efficiency. So a new target was agreed, a corporate target of 46% or fewer homes with a lower than EPC standard, EPCC standard, sorry, down from a baseline of 54% last year. And significant work is already underway for that annual target that we'll report on at the end of the financial year. Significant investment pledge from the City Council, but also a successful Lab 1B, which is a government scheme. Application was made and was successful to support 240 properties, council properties, to have energy efficiency measures. And we're currently looking at loft installation, cavity wall, and also heat pumps as part of that. A new bid is also being prepared for a new government scheme that's opening up in September, and we'll be able to update panel in the future on that. I'll probably leave it at that. I think there were some of the headlines, and I know I've been going on a bit already, so I'm happy to take any questions or clarifications.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Yeah, so let's throw it open for questions, comments, potential recommendations. Liz.
Thanks very much, Linda. I've got questions on rough sleepers and also on affordable housing. So shall I just ask the rough sleeper one?
I'll ask both your questions if you've got two questions.
Okay, fine. Rough sleeping initiative for funding, that's really good news, and it's impressive. I mean, we've been impressive for the last 18 months on this, haven't we? But I suppose that I'm concerned about what's going to happen with the YHA residents at the moment, because on the whole, as I understand it, they're the more complex people, and they're going to be more difficult to find places. I don't know what the whether we're going to be able to do that, or whether we're actually going to have to find somewhere like the YHA to put people who are not easy to place in social lettings of any kind, either private or otherwise. So I was just wondering how we cope with that. And I'm very interested that the social lettings pilot is getting underway with this funding. I think that's really good news, but I'd like to know a bit more about what's being set up to make this happen. That's the question on that one. And then on affordable housing, I suppose it's the figures here, 1,200 affordable homes. I tried to do sums on this. 1,200 affordable homes means 2,400 homes altogether, doesn't it? Because 1,200 will be 50%. That's the affordable. And then 80% of 1,200 is, I worked it out, but it doesn't really matter very much. It's 960, and shared equity would be 240, but those aren't the figures we've got here. So I just wanted to be clear about what 1,200 affordable homes actually means. If you can help out with that, Richard. Right, thank you. That's enough, I think.
Yeah, Richard, if you'd like to come back on those, I think there's enough there for you to answer.
Yeah, cool, thank you. So you might help me on just make sure I understand the question on the affordable homes. So on the 1,200, that's the total affordable homes. That's not affordable rent. That's a general concept of affordable housing. So affordable rent, social rent included in there, but also shared ownership, I understand. So the breakdown then of 750 is then purely social rent homes. That's within the 1,200 overall target. Does that clarify things, or have I misunderstood the question?
I think Councillor Wade is like possibly thinking of our planning policy and like what we demand from developers with our planning policy. But of course, where we're talking about council developments, we're often going far better than our planning policy, aren't we? And you know, getting having a much higher percentage of social housing.
Yes. So
Richard, Stephen, or Mike like to elaborate on that at all?
Yes.
Or Councillor Blackings?
I'd be happy to come in, Chair. I mean, yes, it's essentially we've set ourselves. Previously, we used to have annual targets, as I think some colleagues from the panel have known before. But this year, because of the fluctuation of and how difficult it is to predict some of the timing of development schemes, because some, you know, bringing a site, identifying a site, bringing it to development, delivering it is a complicated process. What we've done is set an overall target of 1,200 homes over the 4-year period. Yeah, of those, as the cover report says, 750 of those are going to be let at social rent, and that's affordable homes across the board, not just what the council's delivering, if that helps. So there's obviously 4 main streams of affordable housing. The housing company that the council owns, we might be doing it directly ourselves through the housing revenue account. An RSL might be providing it for us, or we might be getting it through Section 106 through private development. Liz, yeah?
Yeah, I'm still confused, but I think probably it's a question that I can do in an email, maybe to Richard, just so I can clarify.
Yeah, rather than, we could take it offline, Liz, if it...
Yeah, if you don't mind, because I'm finding the numbers quite difficult to work out in my head. Is that okay if we take it off?
Thanks, Liz. I can see Nadine, Chris and Anthony have got their hands up. Before Richard comes back on the homelessness question, does anyone else have a question on homelessness? Which maybe Richard could address that at the same time as answering Liz's question about homelessness. Nadine,
Yes, thank you very much regarding the data on rough sleepers. The question I wanted to ask is about rough sleepers. Once they are accommodated in private accommodation, are they still being followed up by the homeless team, and has there been a high instance of COVID among this population? Thank you.
Okay, anyone else got a question on homelessness? Yeah, Anthony Buchanan. You're on mute, Tony.
I'm currently working with Aspire and the Gatehouse, and we're working with Marie in corporate services to set up an independent focus panel to oversee the homeless services in a way where we hear what the council's saying, we hear what the services are saying, what they're doing, but that's not what the homeless people are telling us. I've just been reading a report in the Oxfordshire magazine where you say that 216 people have been successfully housed from the streets. Well, what is your definition of successfully? Because a lot of people that have been housed aren't happy one bit at all. They feel that they've been pushed into an area or a situation that is not helping them with their recovery. So I like to know, when your report, does it actually focus on speaking to the homeless people themselves? Because that's what we're doing, and we're getting a different story.
Okay, thanks. Chris, is your question on homelessness or something else? Okay, I had a point related to Tony's, if I may, before you come back on those, Richard, and that was just on paragraph 9 about tracking the rate of successful outcomes, and we've got the 79.6% of homelessness prevention cases resulting in a successful outcome. I was just wondering, does that mean that 20% of people are becoming homeless? Are they becoming street homeless? Can you tell us a bit more about that 20% where a successful outcome isn't achieved? So would you like to deal with that if you,
I'll try to navigate
you.
all that. If I forget any bits, people do pick up on that. I'll start, Chair, with your questions because that one's probably easiest. So the 79 figures, that's purely focused on prevention duties. So that's statutory services that our housing options team deliver. There's a strict kind of government imposed definition on a successful outcome for a prevention duty, which is either successfully allowed to stay in their current property if this is people facing homelessness rather than already made homeless, so if they're allowed to stay there for 6 months or more, or we've rehoused them before they've become homeless, and again that would be for 6 months or more. So that's what the 79% of people are. The people who aren't falling into those categories are a mix. Some people, we have quite a lot of just, of that 20%, of a fair few will just be people who can't go off the radar. They will be engaging with services and they no longer engage, and often that is because these are people still in housing. Sometimes it resolves itself. For those, however, who do end up homeless, and what would happen then is they would move through to our relief duty. So officers would continue to work with them. If they are homeless and we do have, they meet certain criteria, we will put them into temporary accommodation. So it's not that we just forget about them after that 20%, they move on to our relief duty through our statutory services as well. Just to kind of cover off some of the questions, and Stephen, I'll try to cover where I can, and then I might just need you to kind of pull everything together.
That's fine. I'll chip in, Richard. Yeah.
Great. So on YHA, I agree totally. It's going to be a major challenge, and I also, while I'm not directly involved with the operations, I understand that there are high needs in the YHA, but we are continuing with plans to make sure that everyone who is leaving our accommodation at least gets a positive offer of suitable accommodation. And at the moment, we still move forward with that understanding that we think we can deliver that. Obviously not everyone always takes up that offer, but that certainly is how we are moving forward with the work. In regards to the funding and how that might be enabled, so there's two main funding programs at the moment. There's the Next Steps accommodation program, but there's also the Rough Sleeping accommodation program, which are two different sets of funding from government at different stages at the moment. And there's a variety of new services and potential for move on and support through those programs going to be provided. So, for example, some of the program will fund housing first properties to allow move on into those kind of places and then support. But there is also a I think this answers another question. There is a private rented sector element to that. So the part of that money will go towards procuring private rented properties and then delivering support in those properties to make sure that people who have a history of rough sleeping can move on into the private rented sector, but with support provided. Other questions?
Richard,
could I add anything? Yeah,
Richard, could I just chip in on the YHA?
Go ahead.
In terms of Liz's question, yes, you're right. You're right to focus on that, Liz. It's obviously lesser numbers in YHA than Canterbury, but they so it's roughly half the numbers, but they are tending to be the more complex cases. So just to pick up Richard's point, so there's two main destinations. One will be the properties that we're purchasing through the two programs that Richard's just mentioned. So that's the Next Steps accommodation program and the Rough Sleeper accommodation program. We've been successful in buying 5 properties this year, and we're getting them ready for let. We're well advanced with purchasing 9 of the 10 for this year, and we've put in support contracts with A2 Dominion and St Mungo's to support clients who will move from YHA into those housing first properties. There'll also be a residual number that will move into a repurposed Floyd's Row. In terms of, we're doing some changes to Floyd's Row. Obviously the limitations of using the shared space in Floyd's Row now have been relaxed. We're doing some modifications to the building, and so we will be repurposing Floyd's Row as well. But we'll look at, it'll obviously be an ever-moving feast as we work through the 38 or so clients from the YHA. So hopefully that helps with your question, Liz. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big help. It's good to know that it's being managed, and I'm pleased that we're being able to do something with Floyd's Row, that we are, because there are going to be more people needing accommodation when the winter comes, aren't there? Inevitably.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I didn't quite catch Richard. I didn't quite catch Nadine's question. I don't know if you did. Do you want to move to that one?
On COVID, was that one?
Was it
about COVID infections in accommodation? I believe it was.
Yeah, it was about, I think you have probably answered the question already, that people, homeless people who are now accommodated in private accommodation are being followed up by the homeless team. I think you sort of hinted at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you did. No, it's about talking about if there has been any COVID infection in the accommodations when they were, during the pandemic. among this population of people?
The straightforward answer to that is no, Nadine.
Okay.
We've managed to avoid it.
Mike, do you want to come in on homelessness?
Should we pick up Anthony's question? Is it?
Yeah.
It was Anthony's question as well, wasn't it? In terms of.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, good question, Anthony. What I think it's important to understand when we talk about people who came through everyone in. Not every one of those 300 and odd people that have either gone through everyone in or are currently in everyone in actually was on the streets. So if you can just imagine what we discovered under everyone in was that there were a lot of hidden homeless single people. So they were, and I'm sure you can appreciate that, Anthony, in terms of people sofa surfing, etc., moving from accommodations, maybe on the street, but back into accommodation and so on. So what we're saying is that, yes, we've successfully moved on 250. And what we mean by that is that we've offered accommodation to them that is secure for them. It might not be, in many cases, exactly what they want, but it is accommodation that's suitable for them and it's sustainable, i.e. it's affordable for them in terms of housing benefit and affordability. What I think we are struggling with, and I think we've got to be honest with this, is, and we're trying to work on this moving forward as to how we respond to rough sleeping, is how do we track those individuals to make sure that they remain, they don't go back round in the circle and pop up again as in insecure accommodation and potentially rough sleeping. And that's something we're trying to work through with the new county-wide recommissioning of services, where we're going to be getting a lot more cooperation under an alliance contract between all the different providers, because Oxford is a patchwork of lots of providers. And one of the problems with that patchwork, although it's impressive in one way, it's complicated in another, and there's not always enough cooperation across that patchwork. And in the re-procurement through an alliance process, one of the things we're trying to develop is a tracking system, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but we need to understand where we're failing, where we think it's sustained accommodation, but they fall out of that sustainable accommodation. Why is it? Try and understand it, and do we need to start to do things differently? And going back to your point around people with experience, I mean, you're absolutely right. We've a while ago, and the chair was involved when the chair was portfolio holder, we put a big emphasis on trying to involve people either who are currently homeless or have got experience of homeless, so lived experience, involved in what we're doing and how we're doing it. I think we've made a lot of progress on that, but I'm not saying I'm not suggesting we're there yet. And I think we want to try and build that principle to make sure that we do get that bottom-up intelligence as well, as opposed to just the information from providers of services. So I agree with a lot of the points you make, Anthony, yeah?
Yeah, if I can just come in, I think it certainly wouldn't hurt to have a recommendation from this panel on that, if members are in agreement, just to say it's really important that the input from the lived experience advisory forum and other avenues where people with lived experience can make their views known, that the council and all the partners that we're working with, that we continue to make use of those and involve people with lived experience wherever possible in the new arrangements as we come out of everyone in. Is everyone in agreement with that? Can we have that as a recommendation?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's fairly straightforward. Okay, thanks, Tom. Mike, do you want to come in on homelessness? You've had your hand up, and then we'll go to Chris's question. Chris has been waiting very patiently.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to say, since Floyd's Row was mentioned, as you may know, ODS has been involved in researching the requirements and drawing up how those can be met to make Floyd's Row safe in the era of coronavirus, that work has been done, and I'm pretty confident, pardon me, that we can have Floyd's Row in operation, with those arrangements made by the beginning of December. So hopefully that will give us another resource with those people who are still on the streets or who become homeless at that time.
Thanks for the update, Mike. Councillor Jarvis.
Thanks, Chair.
Let's hear your question.
Can you hear me now? No.
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Brilliant. Hopefully, relatively straightforward one. Just on paragraph 15 of the report, this point around EPC certificates, and I was just wondering, of the 240 homes that are listed as being improved, are all of those 240 below C? And also, what impact does that 240 as a numerical figure have on the percentage in terms of the KPI?
Simple answer to the first question is yes. So we've targeted the worst properties first. In terms of, I think if Tom could minute that, we'll circulate the exact numbers of the impact. I think it's around 25%, I think, Chris, but I just need to go back and double check what the level of inroads we're making on that.
Might I suggest perhaps that might be the report that's being written on carbon and housing. Perhaps we could just feed that information into that report. Would that be suitable, Councillor Jarvis?
Yeah, good suggestion, Tom. Thank you. We'll do that.
Lawrence, you have a question? Can't currently hear you, Lawrence.
Sorry about that.
Yep.
I have a number of questions following on from Councillor Jarvis's point. How will the effectiveness of this decarbonisation work be actually measured? Is it just on EPC, or were there any account taken of tenants' bills reduction or energy use reduction? Secondly, is there any involvement with tenants in what work is carried out in their properties? There is an issue to do with the usability of some heating systems that might be experimented with. Are the officers really happy about the reliability of things like air source heat pumps? And finally, are they all flats? It mentions homes, but are we talking, are they all houses, or is any work being carried out, experiments in flats?
Okay, thank you.
I'll pick that up, Chair. The main measure is around the EPC measure, Councillor. But of course, if we're improving, cavity wall insulation, external wall insulation, roof insulation, it is going to impact on people's bills in a positive way. But we're not doing any measures around what were their bills versus what are they post. So that's not in our plans. Although I'm not thinking through from your suggestion, we might want to think about how we might track that a little bit better. On the issue of usability, I think you've raised an important point, particularly around technology around air source and ground source heat pumps. We've had for members who are long standing in Oxford, we've tried ground source heat pumps some years ago, and it hasn't worked well. But obviously technology has moved on very significantly, and we're just putting our toe in the water around experimenting with some air and ground source heat pumps as part of this programme. And again, very key point, which is how we take residents with us through this. And our experience from talking to our direct experience, but also experience from some other authorities who've done it on a slightly larger scale, is that we do need to put a lot of effort and resource into working with residents, both to understand their needs going forward, but literally how we can do the works in as least disruptive way possible. So what our experience under this programme is that we've been on a very strict deadline around spend from the government. We've had to ask the government for some extension because engagement, we've had some delays around procuring the people that do the work for us, because there's a limited number of accredited people. But secondly is to the amount of time that we need to spend, as we're experiencing now, the amount of time we need to spend with residents, explaining everything, making sure they're comfortable with it, trying to work around their specific household requirements and so on. So one of the learnings from this programme is we need to allow a lot more time of working with residents, and we need to put a lot more officer time into working with residents.
Okay, thank you. If that's all questions from other members of the panel, I'd like to just make a comment on paragraph 17 about the rent arrears. The figure we've got there doesn't really seem that helpful to us, because it includes technical debts or arrears, but really it's just to do with the date that a direct debit goes out. Is there a more useful figure that you could present to us in future, such as arrears over a month old or something like that? And then related to that, I do feel that something perhaps our tenants, council tenants and leaseholders might expect from us as the council's housing panel is to have a bit of a grip on the performance of our landlord services. Obviously, this report, it's very high level, it's dealing with the KPIs, but I think it might be useful for this panel to regularly see information, data about things which reflect more the day-to-day experience of our council tenants. I'm thinking about, how long does it take for repairs to get done? How long do properties left void in between tenants? Things like that. I don't want to generate loads of extra work for people, and I know that these are figures which management will have, whether it's in the Housing Services Department or ODS. But with the panel's permission, I'd like to go away and talk to officers and maybe come back with something before the next meeting, so that we can get that information in some kind of dashboard, maybe with a very brief commentary at our meetings, so we can keep an eye on those sorts of metrics. Would the panel support that, and do officers have any comment at this stage? Can I see, is there agreement on that from panel members? Getting thumbs up, nods? Yeah.
Linda, sorry, Chair, we can of course do that. We weren't sure in terms of the performance report. We wanted to obviously put a performance across all the issues to do with housing, with the way we've done. We can obviously have a suite of KPIs, as you know. We measure repairs performance, voids performance, rents performance. So we do that at service level anyway. So we can put that together quite easily for you. So we could do that for the second quarter. If we do that on a quarterly basis, we'll do that, for the period September to December for you. Yeah.
That sounds perfect. Yeah, and let's talk about what we might have included in there. Yeah, if the panel are happy for me as chair to lead on that with officers to decide, what information we get. That's great. Thank you very much. So I think that concludes that. We've still got two people with hands up. Are they legacy hands? Liz, Mike?
It's a question actually about empty homes.
Liz. Yeah.
I can ask that. It's just that there was an article in the Oxford Mail today saying we've got 705 empty homes, and I was wondering, it's a small city, this one, it's only 155,000 people, isn't it? So 705 is serious. I was thinking about a recommendation which I haven't really put into a sensible form yet, about trying to find out how we actually identify these houses and how we pursue some quite serious attempt to reduce the number of empty homes that we've got. So I don't know what other people think about this, but I am concerned that the number seems to be going up all the time. That's all.
Stephen, do we still have an empty homes officer?
We do, but not within the housing service now. It's within regulatory services. But yes, we do. Can I suggest you have a think about whether or not we have a specific report on that matter and focus, a separate performance report on empty homes when we do the quarterly overall performance report? Can I suggest we do that?
Yep, that's fine. Yep. Thank you.
It might be useful at some point maybe to have a report from our empty homes officer on the work they do.
No, I'd get the empty homes officer to do it, and then they can describe the numbers, how we identify them, what actions we take, how successful we are, etc. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, Tom. So can we get that added to the work plan? Yeah, an item from the empty homes officer. I think that'd be interesting for us all. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to add to hopefully help clarify on rent's performance that on almost everything, and to my surprise and pleasure, the rent's performance has been tracking the previous year and the pre-pandemic level of arrears fairly closely. The one matter of concern that ought to be flagged up and that I have flagged up is there is something of an increase in longer term arrears. Let me get this up. Yeah, accounts more than 8 weeks in arrears have risen from around 340 to 405 at the end of the last quarter. So obviously the welfare reform team is keeping a close eye on that and is working with people. Obviously we can understand why some people might have some longer term arrears given what's been happening over the past 18 months. So our officers are working with those tenants closely to find solutions, and pretty confident we can. Yes.
Thanks for that, Mike. Is anyone able to tell us what's the council's policy on evictions at the moment now the eviction ban has ended?
Yeah, I think would you like me to take this? From previous comments made in finance panel, it's generally speaking that the council doesn't tend to pursue evictions, but will seek some other legal thing that enables them subsequently to pursue an eviction if payments aren't made. So, and they are also taking they've had a lot of success in doing sort of nudge and more early intervention activity. That was what was explained to the finance panel when that was raised as a question. I'm paraphrasing slightly, but that's the general idea.
Okay. Nadine.
Sorry, I'm probably unmuting myself. Oh yeah, so well done for the 4 years targets. 750 social rents and 1,200 affordable homes. Regarding the social rents, is there a priority list, or how is it going to be allocated? Do people have this? I mean, can somebody tell me about that a bit more about social rents? Is it the first person, first serve, first person arrived, first served, or is it a kind of priority list for the social rents? How does it work exactly? I don't know who I could ask the question.
Someone.
I mean, all the new stock for social rent will be allocated through the council's choice-based letting system, and the council's allocation system prioritises that. Yeah, so it's they just go into the normal stock allocation. Yeah.
Okay, so they are the people who are on the waiting list.
Absolutely, waiting list, transfer list, homeless. So the overall list. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, I think that concludes that item now. So thank you very much, Richard. Stephen, are you staying for the next item?
I'm going to stay for the next one, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Richard.
Let's move on to the next item then, item 6 on tenant engagement and empowerment. We've got Simon here and a whole bevy of tenant ambassadors joining us this evening as well. So thank you very much for to everyone for taking the time to come. Because we've got so many speakers on this, I think Tom's asked you to limit contributions to 3 minutes each, if that's okay, because we just want to make sure that we've got plenty of time for discussion afterwards. So with that, Simon, would you like to kick off?
Thank you, Chair. And just to say, the invite today is very welcome. So thank you very much. I'm going to share a presentation now. And just to give you some notice, this presentation is going to look slightly different to the one I believe you received in your pack. And that's solely this version has a larger font size. So it'll be easier to see on the screen, but the content between this presentation and the one you've got in your pack is exactly the same. So I'll just start by sharing this now. Can I just check?
We can see it, but
check if that's come through.
You're breaking up, Simon, as far as I'm concerned. Is that the same for everybody?
Yes.
Yes, it is, Chair.
Come through.
Can't hear you, Simon.
Simon, try switching your camera off to see if that will help.
Yeah, I will do. Sorry, yeah, I just realised that froze, and I'm just going to share again now. Can the presentation be seen, Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, I can see it.
Thank you. Thank you. Just getting a little bit of screen freeze there, so I just wanted to make sure that we'd got through. As we know, we've got 6 tenant leaseholder volunteers that are present today. We have Gina, Brenda, Tony, David, Anthony, and Olga, and you'll be hearing from them a bit later on. Our tenant and leaseholder volunteers we call ambassadors. So these are our tenant and leaseholder ambassadors. The tenant involvement team itself is made up of myself, the tenant involvement manager. We have Justine Nunn, tenant involvement officer. We have Wendy Hind, another tenant involvement officer. And we have Scott Wilson, a tenant involvement support officer. Next week, through the council's apprenticeship programme, we'll be getting a young lady called Abigail Arona starting in the team as a tenant involvement housing apprentice. That's for a 2-year period. This is our second apprentice. We had one approximately 5 years ago, and they ended up getting a job in housing services. So I'm hoping that working with Annabelle over the next couple of years, similar opportunities will open up to her as well. So a bit of background. We're a team of 4 permanent staff, as per the previous slide. We are funded by the Housing Revenue Account. And I probably don't need to remind you that the housing revenue is sort of generated from our tenants' rental payments. It's there to help kind of manage and maintain their homes. The account itself is ring-fenced by statute, which means that it's money that can be only sort of spent on activities for our tenants and leaseholders. So as a team, we are very, very much here to kind of work with and serve our tenants and leaseholders. Our purpose, the regulator of social housing has a number of standards. One of those standards is the Tenant Involvement and Empowerment Standard. We're here to kind of help ensure that Oxford City Council is compliant to that standard. And to do that, you know, we need to empower our tenants and leaseholders to monitor, scrutinise the landlord-related services, and by doing that, they can kind of develop the services they are receiving from us and paying for through their rent and service charges. To do that, we often have to work with a lot of colleagues, a lot of teams across housing services and housing related services that deliver the services that our tenants and leaseholders rents and service charges are paying for. So we often work in partnership with other teams across the council. We also, to support our ambassadors, we kind of deliver some bespoke training. One of members of the team actually has a teaching degree, which is really, really helpful. And we also look for external training and training providers that we feel will fit in with certain activities the ambassadors are working on. In the past, there's a national tenant involvement body called TPAS, the Tenant Participation Advisory Service. In 2016, we went through a pretty rigorous process to try and achieve accreditation through TPAS. We successfully did this in 2016. The accreditation only lasts for 3 years, so we went through a similar process early last year, and we got re-accredited, which is a really good thing, especially certainly in 2016. We are one of 4 councils nationally that has achieved this accreditation, so that's a really, really positive thing. And you know, I can't say enough that you know, we can't get that accreditation without our tenants and leaseholders we work with, so it's a vital partnership. Through TPAS again, we achieved a team of the year in the national awards. You will all be aware of our quarterly tenant magazine, Tenants in Touch, and it is just reiterating that's become very, very well recognised, not just internally in the council, but externally with other peers. It's got quite a name for itself. Just a reference here to kind of some digital engagement platforms. Naturally, we make use of the Oxford City Council website. We have tenant involvement pages here, there. We have our own tenant involvement Facebook account. And very recently, last year, we set up this bespoke portal specifically for when tenant leaseholders become ambassadors. They can register onto this portal. It's something that we've created, and it's a platform where tenants and leaseholders can write blogs. There's kind of a chat mechanism where tenants and leaseholders can share kind of housing information or recommendations about our services. We've got a page on there which is kind of bespoke to training tools for ambassadors, to name but a few. It's a very, very strong platform, and it's had a great amount of use from our volunteers. So next, I'm going to move on to some examples of tenant involvement activities. I'll sort of be clear here that this isn't everything we do, and it's certainly not everything we've done in the past. All I'm trying to capture here is what's involved in tenant involvement is perhaps a little more varied than people would necessarily be aware. The second thing I will say is I'm not going to go into these in huge detail because our guest speakers are going to do a lot of this on my behalf. But just a reference again to the Tenants in Touch magazine, and we have tenants involved in writing articles for that. We have a particular tenant called Steve that has been creating the very well received and used quiz page on there for a number of years, and we involve tenants and leaseholders in kind of the editing of that magazine. We produce annual reports. We've done one for 2019, 2020, and shortly we'll be looking to produce one for the financial year 2020 to 21. We have ambassadors heavily involved in the wonderful Great Estates project. I won't go into any more detail now because that will be coming very shortly. We have tenants and leaseholders involved in contract tender evaluations, so the contractors that are set up within the housing service. We have tenants and leaseholders that form stakeholder interview panels, and these are interview panels for housing posts that have been advertised on the Oxford City Council website. I know this was touched on a little bit earlier this evening. We carried out consultation through Tenants in Touch on the HRA investment on the retrofitting of the council housing stock for to improve energy efficiency. We have a tenant sitting on a residents panel for the housing ombudsman. Sorry, that's a word I often struggle with. And again, one of our ambassadors will be going into more detail about that. We've helped support the project team for the Blackbird Leas regeneration and engaged with some of our local tenants there. And although the resident liaison officer doesn't sit within my team anymore, I'm making reference to this because that position was in my team for 6 years, and we worked, we did a massive amount of work on the tower block refurbishment program. I think going back to when the project was first initiated, sort of 2 years before site set up, and we were heavily involved in the recladding works that needed to be carried out, and the initial kind of response to Grenfell Tower. So I just make a reference. Yeah, we've been heavily involved in that project. Something we did a lot of prior to sort of pre-COVID. We would carry out soft skills training in community centres across the city, and when we're talking soft skills, we're talking sort of craft workshops. This had a number of benefits. One sort of being for our tenants and leaseholders, it was an opportunity for them to learn new skills and to meet new people. And from a tenant involvement perspective, it gave us a kind of an opportunity to speak to tenants more about housing, the housing service, but then it also introduced the concept of tenant involvement, and through running these courses, we were able to get kind of more tenants and leaseholders involved. And when I'm saying we did this pre-COVID, you know, this is something that hasn't sort of come to the end of the journey. It's something we'll be looking to kind of start up again, because it was a very useful process. So the next slide, I'm going to move on to our guest speakers. What I'll do, I will stop sharing for now, and then I will introduce each of these speakers in turn. When we get to the end, I will bring up the presentation again, because I've got a few more slides to go through.
Okay, thank you, Simon.
Thank you. So first of all, I would like to introduce Brenda Walton and Gina Humphrey to talk a little bit about their work on contract tender evaluation.
They're currently both muted.
Gina and Brenda, are you muted?
Right, can you hear me now?
Yes, Brenda, thank you.
Yeah, I'm Brenda Walton. I've been a council tenant now for over 50 years in Oxford, and I've been involved with tenant involvement for 12 or 13 years now. Gina and I have both been working recently on tenders that have come up for renewal on behalf of the City Council. I'd quickly like to go through the process of what happens with us, and then Gina will raise some other points of how we feel very involved by helping with this process. First of all, when a contract is up for renewal, or if it's a new contract and it's going to be put out to tender, one of the team will contact not just myself, but other ambassadors, and we'll be invited to be on the team to look at the tenders that are coming in. If we agree to do it, there's an initial meeting with the team member and whoever else is going to be working on the tender, and we go through what the work is going to involve. It may be that we'll have to meet with a team within the council that are going to be using the goods and supply and services which are going to be supplied. It may be that it's something we already know about, and so we can go straight ahead. When the procurement put out the tenders, and when they're received into the council, they're obviously vetted by legal people, and when they're happy with the contracts that's come in, we then get sight of the tender. I have to stress, we are not shown the price that the people are charging us. We feel it's better that we don't see that price, because we want to evaluate the company on what they're saying to us in their tender. We're given time to read the tenders. Sometimes there may be only one or two. On one occasion, there has actually been 8 of them for us to scrutinise. We go through them. If we've got any points that we don't really understand, say on technical issues, we can always go back to the team member and have that clarified for us. When we've read all of the tenders, we then go through, there is a matrix that's given to us, and we judge certain points about the contract. It does vary from contract to contract what those points are, and they are weighted against the final score. Having done them individually, and I stress the tenants do them individually, and the officers are doing exactly the same work and they do theirs individually. We then have a joint meeting, we go through, we look at each other's scores where we've scored it. If we agree, fine, and if we've got the same kind of scores, fine. If we haven't, then we discuss it, we debate it, we maybe ask for clarification on points, but we finish up with a final score, which is consensus of all of our scores together. At that point, procurement come in, and procurement of obviously they have got the prices, and I always say it's a little bit magic that they use, that by using some kind of algorithm, they incorporate the price with the scores that we've come up with for the contracts, and a result is produced of who we think should get the contract. sometimes the result is very, very close, and in those cases, we generally have further discussion to see which one of the contractors we will recommend. And then the procurement officer takes that off to, I believe it's Stephen, and has discussions with him. From there on, Gino can pick this up. Is Gino there?
You there? Is Gino there?
Are you on mute, Gino?
We can't see or hear you, Gino. Do we want to move on to the next speaker, Simon? Because I think we've heard quite a lot about procurement.
Yeah, that's
already.
Fine. So I'll move on now to Anthony Church, who's going to talk about his work on the Great Estates programme.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. As I said before, my name is Anthony Church, and at the moment I'm currently involved in the Great Estates team. Since I've become a member and been involved with the Oxford City Council's Great Estates, it's opened my eyes to what can be achieved to improve the environment for tenants and leaseholders who reside in the low-rise flats managed by Oxford City Council. I attend 2 to 4 weekly meetings with the project lead, tenant involvement, resident liaison coordinator, the TMOs and the leaseholder management officer, and fellow ambassadors who have an interest in this particular area. My role as an ambassador on the panel is, along with others, to identify sites that would benefit from a makeover and to just discuss the budget for the sites and the feedback from residents as to what they would like to see incorporated in the area to be refurbished. Identification of sites are then shortlisted. Usually we choose the sites by doing site visits, but due to the pandemic, this has all gone on hold. And with the help of the Great Estates team, they provide very detailed drawings and plans for the panel to view and discuss during video conference calls. This enables to look at the budget, the timetable, the site, the setup for the site, and the possible disruption, if any, to residents on the sites that are finally decided. I like to think that the tenant involvement team and the ambassadors have influenced the Great Estates team to carry out the refurbishments to sites they have identified and discussed and enabled the Great Estates team in conjunction with Oxford Direct Services to successfully deliver the much needed improvements as they have done so in the recent past. Tenant involvement also arranged site visits and meetings to discuss post-works and arrange the monitoring of post-works through consultation and the surveys. This enables ambassadors and the whole team to discuss any issues that have been identified by residents and or tenants that came up of any problems. And this enables us to put into place any preventative measures when we move on to the next project. I'm proud to be part of the Great Estates team as I care for the area that I live in, and works like this, I hope, make other tenants and leaseholders take responsibility and care for the areas that have been established and refurbished by the Great Estates team. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony.
Can I come back now? I have got the mic. Sorry.
Gino, what would you like to add?
It was just on what I mean. Brenda's basically gone through everything there enough, but just a couple of things from when we actually was invited or asked if we'd like to take part in the project, and it was just a quick call from the team asking us if we'd like to be involved in the tendering process and the evaluation even. But as Brenda and myself had done one previously, the training, we were offered training if we needed it, as far as the evaluation was concerned. But as Brenda and myself had already done one previously, we didn't need the training. So that training, I said, is absolutely brilliant because it's available for all the new ambassadors who come on board who would like to be part and get involved in the process. And we were given, I suppose we were given a table, so to speak, of how we score. A scoring table, a matrix table was provided. and this was scoring for the purpose from the suppliers, so I should say, so that we can actually be able to know who's going to win their tender. Brenda also mentioned about time. We were given ample time. I must express that because it was a bit of a long one. It took a few weeks, but we were given ample time to go through every single thing and to actually basically just read it and make comments and just make notes against the criteria that's required for it. That's about it. What I must say, though, it's, how can you put it? It's good because we had to follow the exact remit as the staff of the city council and the officers are working in the team. So it wasn't the case of that we were tenants and we had to go from one different remit to the other ones. It was all the same remit. And just finally, I'd like to say it was a long one. It took a few weeks, but I totally enjoyed it. And I feel that, you know, as many tenants as possible get involved in this process, it will give them a lot more confidence in their status as a tenant, but also their involvement into decision making and how their homes have been basically monitored or looked after for them. I'm done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gino. We'll move on to David Simmer now, just talk a little bit about the being part of the interview process. I'd sorry to put a bit of pressure on you, David, but we'll probably have to speed up a little bit, I think.
What is that?
Hello, hopefully you can hear me, even perhaps see me. I'm known for rambling, so I should stick to my notes that I've made. My name's David and been council tenant 35 years and involved tenants ambassador for about 18 months now. So basically I was contacted by the team to see if I'd be interested in taking part in stakeholder interviews for housing posts. I thought, well, this sounds very good, very grand. There was a meeting held beforehand to discuss the post, share job advert and description. Discussion was also held on interview questions and model answers. Then the team come back with bookings as regards appointments for the actual interviews. There is some flexibility quite often with this fitting around my availability as well as others, of course. The interviews are actually carried out on the same process as what council staff would, and we score each question on interview sheets, which we get sent, print them out and make notes and score accordingly. At the end of the day, we then have a meeting with the tenant involvement, it's usually Simon, Wendy at the end of the day, to discuss scoring and feedback on comments that we've noted. So then usually what happens is what has happened, should I say, is post-meeting, there is, once somebody's been offered or appointed to the post, sorry, I'm trying to understand my own writing here. I should have been a doctor, I think. Yeah, during this meeting, transparency is shown by the scoring and how, hang on, by showing the scoring from staff interview panel explains how and why they were appointed, such as our scoring may reflect a higher thing against something that is needed within the council. Let's say from a academic side or something. And then around about a month later, it's a case we have a meeting which is very informal, where we get to meet the appointed person, introduce ourselves and say hello, and it's quite good to actually sort of like meet the lucky person a month later and see how they're settling into their position, and you know, just to introduce yourselves. I will say that these interviews have actually been held online because of the pandemic. Personally, I find that works quite well. For me, certainly, because I have a very sort of limited schedule, because I look after my wife and I have a son with disabilities, so my time can be eaten up. So working online has actually enabled me to perhaps do a bit more and be more involved as a tenant ambassador, whether it be with interviews or other areas. So I think that's it. I've actually kept it short.
Thank you. Thank you, David. That's appreciated. So Tony, just 3 minutes, please, on your work on the Housing Ombudsman Resident Panel. Thank you very much. You're on mute. You're on mute, Tony. You're on mute.
I know. Yeah. Right. Okay. I was appointed as a resident for the Housing Ombudsman as part of the government's white paper, which they required. My role is twofold. Firstly, I am working as a part of a 600-strong resident team with the Housing Ombudsman to deliver their 3-year business plan on social housing. Secondly, I'm going to be working with the Oxford City Council to establish and maintain a complaints procedure in accordance with any good practice recommended by the Housing Ombudsman, and to ensure that it is followed to the new regulatory requirements as set out in the new complaints handling code, which again is in a housing white paper. So there's a few strategic objectives. The first is to deliver a fair and impartial service, resolving complaints at the earliest opportunity to promote a high quality complaints handling system at the Oxford City Council, to promote positive change in the sector with greatest access and awareness and consistency of information given on the repair status to residents, to develop an open and transparent complaint handling system with a resident board to focus on ensuring complaints are handled on time, to take action to put things right and appropriate remedies, and to inform the resident of their rights to contact the Housing Ombudsman, which is now a legal duty for all housing providers to ensure that they tell the residents. This is now down to 2 families on the council part instead of 3. To take action to put things right and appropriate, and to look at ways of improving the service, and to publish complaints and procedures in accordance with a resident focus group. Landlords are expected to deal with complaints in line with both the scheme and the complaints handling code to avoid the new Housing Ombudsman's power to issue complaints handling failures. This has occurred now quite frequently amongst housing providers, where the Housing Ombudsman has applied housing failures to providers because they haven't been carrying out the regulations as stated in the white paper. So my job will be to help the council through the training I'm doing to fulfil the new recommendations set out in the white paper. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Back to you, Simon. Simon, you're frozen.
Can we go straight on to Olga, Chair? If Simon is voting, the next speaker, I believe, is Olga.
Okay, Olga, would you like to begin?
Thank you, Chair. So my name is Olga. I'm a new ambassador, and this is a brief journey of how I got there. Basically, I've moved into my council accommodation 3 years ago with a severe health condition that pretty much leaves me bedbound. And I have about 5 functional hours a day at best. And whilst we were in COVID, and I was sheltering in place, I wanted to cheer up the environment by growing some plants outside, and spotted in the Tenants in Touch magazine a little article about environmental improvement. So that was how I first got to speak to the team. And I spoke with Justine And from there, got to meet a whole delegation that came round and met some tenant ambassadors and had a good conversation with Wendy. And later, obviously with COVID, things were delayed somewhat. So I was kind of just giving a follow-up call, and I got to speak with Simon. And next thing I knew, two things happened. One, I was invited to just be a part of a tenant team supporting the housing and homeless strategy. So the consultation, and that was with Simon and a small team, which was tremendously interesting and enriching. And I was able to bring 8 years previous experiences running a mental health and homeless group in London. So it felt very rewarding to be able to share an input from experience, as well as to hear others and learn how things are going now. Really, really touched by being part of that. And then Wendy invited me to join the Great Estates, well, not to join it, but just to witness what was going on. And at that time, I was lying in my bed, and even looking at a screen would tire me out in 5 minutes. And I still find it difficult, but I found ways to manage it. And from there, we got talking, and basically, Wendy's, I don't know, you must have a magic intuition, Wendy, about where somebody is ready for something, because next thing I know, opportunities are appearing, and I'm now involved with fellow ambassadors making a response to the government consultation on the Green Paper for Health and Disability, and we're just in process. We've got a really tight timescale, so it's quite a challenge, and but it's a very, very enriching and meaningful thing. So, and I just want to honour that team, because for me, it was a really organic process. If somebody had said, apply for this, I wouldn't have done it, because my situation was just too fragile. But just the contact and the encouragement has made something blossom. And I've really appreciated the spirit and warmth that the team are bringing, and the passion they have for their work, which is obviously outreaching and affecting a lot of people. So yeah, I think that's probably enough to say for now. So thank you for the opportunity to share.
No, thanks for sharing your story, Olga. Thank you. Simon, is Simon with us now? He's disappeared. Wendy, is there much more of the presentation?
Yes, I believe he's actually faded into the distance there, Chair. I apologise for that. I don't have the copy in front of me of the document that he was sharing. So if I could ask Tom, can you put the version that I sent you up, and I will take you through the last few slides.
I'm afraid that will take a little bit of time, because I'd send it from one computer to another and such like. There were only a couple of slides left.
Yeah.
So my gut feeling is that we've heard the vast majority of it, and if Simon comes back, he could feed in. But it might be better to ask questions for panel members to ask questions arising from this.
Tom, excuse me interrupting, but Simon is just coming back into the meeting.
Okay, no, fair enough then. Just whilst we're waiting for Simon, I should have said this at the beginning. The panel is doing something slightly different this year, in that it's looking at one topic from multiple angles once each meeting. So the idea is, for this one, if we have recommendations, it will form a body of recommendations about tenant engagement that will form one long report that will be written at the end of the year, rather than going immediately to Cabinet. So we'll be looking at tenant engagement and empowerment every meeting, but if you have recommendations, they won't go immediately to Cabinet, but will be sort of written up for the April meeting and then signed off there.
So Simon is now back in the meeting.
Simon, sorry we lost you.
Yeah, sorry.
We've heard from all the tenant ambassadors. Do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, sorry, that's an embarrassing moment to lose connection. I have a few more slides. Would you like me to rush through those sort of very quickly?
Yeah, the presentation was circulated to panel members as part of the agenda, but if you'd like to go through them quickly, then
yeah, that's no trouble at all. I appreciate time is
You still with us, Simon?
I am, sorry, Chair.
Nadine, your hand has been up for a while. Do you have is it a question for when we move on to questions and comments, or is it something urgent? It's just, it can wait. Okay.
It's not urgent, it can wait.
Okay. I'll come to you first when we move to discussion.
Simon, would it help if I found my slides?
Just one moment, Wendy. There we go. So I'll get through this sort of quickly now for you, Chair. I know you requested some information on consultation methods prior to today's meeting, and what I'm just trying to highlight here that we're certainly not the only team in the council that carries out consultation, and generally with consultation we find that there is no kind of single way of doing it, and you generally need to create something more bespoke. And general methods of consultation are doing things online, and we are fully aware that not everybody is online, but we're also fully aware more and more people are becoming online, and it's a much more kind of cost-effective and accessible method. We also utilize telephone consultation quite a lot. And we utilize doorstep consultation surveys quite a lot, certainly where we're carrying out consultation in a very kind of direct area. Postal surveys used to be kind of the go-to option, but being honest, they are costly and they warrant very little return. So we do provide postal surveys, but generally we do that on request. So some people do actually still need postal surveys, but we generally do that on request instead of kind of printing hundreds and hundreds of surveys with prepaid envelopes, and often getting a very kind of low response rate. We'll do it as and when somebody kind of needs it to fit their requirements. So what's next for tenant involvement? I know Stephen was referring earlier to the social housing white paper. This is incredibly important. There's 7 key chapters in the white paper. I won't read those all out now, but pretty much all of those 7 chapters have a strand of a kind of tenant involvement requirement within them. Tenant engagement is a huge focus in the social housing white paper. We've got a detailed internal action plan to deal with the requirements of the housing white paper, and that's broken down to meet compliance. It does need a lot of kind of teams working together, and the action plan kind of captures who those teams are. We've got a new tenant involvement structure for our tenant and leaseholder ambassadors, and beyond, that kind of fits the needs of the social housing white paper. We've had to adapt things a little bit. Building safety, a huge thing. The building safety bill is about to be awarded royal assent, and obviously this is the kind of initial response from the Grenfell Tower tragedy. Internally, we're about to set up a building safety project team, and at the moment we're recruiting for a building safety panel of ambassadors. with the emphasis that project team and the ambassador panel will work together. The ambassadors are there to kind of help ensure that we're meeting, achieving a compliance of the building safety bill, and to also assist. We're going to need to do a lot of communication out to our tenants and leaseholders, and it's ensuring we're getting that communication right. With the new complaints handling kind of procedure, as Tony's spoken about, there's going to be a lot more kind of involvement in that area. We're just recruiting at the moment for roles we're calling in-depth assessors. They're in place. So when we're carrying out kind of perception and transactional surveys, and we're getting this feedback about satisfaction, it's monitoring where we're getting low satisfaction, and then you know, working with the council and the relevant services to look at how we can increase that satisfaction where, and how we need to kind of make improvements to the services. I'm very, very keen to ask for Tenant Involvement to have a great deal of work on housing development with this kind of continue house building now. I'd like to see tenant engagement at kind of perhaps earlier stages, planning stages, sort of development site stages, carrying out inspections of the properties once they've been signed over but they're untenanted, and then working with us to carry out satisfaction surveys, maybe kind of a month or two after a new tenant has moved in. Something that I know was referred to earlier, I think by yourself, Chair. We want to have kind of a lot more involvement in tenants and leaseholders, helping out or monitoring our performance, such as that gas safety inspection, the repairs, the relet times, ASB kind of case levels and themes. So I think that's kind of touching on what was raised a little bit earlier on. And lastly, I really keen, and I think this is really important for the council. I would really like to see there being a tenant and leaseholder board, and when I'm talking board, this board being a kind of high level within the council, and that's sort of being twofold. The various kind of tenant panels and the things we have created, they would report into the tenant and leaseholder board, which is understandably made up of tenants and leaseholders, but also there would be kind of a requirement maybe for kind of heads of services or directors to also report into the board as well. You know, that needs some more work and some more thought, but you know, it's kind of a message I wanted to finish on today, because I think in regards to tenant engagement, I think that's where it needs to be. So hopefully, Chair, I finished off those last few slides quickly. I certainly felt I was talking fast, but that's the end of my presentation today. Thank you very much.
Chair, sorry, you're muted.
Sorry, elementary mistake. So yeah, we'll throw it open now for discussion and comments. As Tom said, the idea here isn't to come up with concrete recommendations now, but so if people can sort of ask questions, make points, maybe if they've got an idea about a recommendation at this very early stage, perhaps float that so it can be noted by Tom. But the idea is that you know, that we continue discussing these themes about tenant involvement and empowerment, you know, throughout the municipal year, and actually come up with a body of work, you know, where we can put all our recommendations in one place, and hopefully make a useful contribution both to the council's response to the housing white paper and whatever laws come out of that, but also possibly with the merging of our housing and communities directorate. You know, things are going to be done perhaps differently in the council, and now is a good time to start thinking about these issues and, you know, how things could be improved. So with that, Nadine, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Well, yeah, thank you very much for Olga's story and Anthony's work and all the work that is being done by the tenant ambassador. It sounds like quite amazing. So thank you very much for that. I wanted to talk about the Housing Development Working Group, and that sounds like it's a very, very good initiative. I will be really wholeheartedly for that. I don't know if there is a kind of accommodation can be made around that, so that the tenants can become involved in the pre-planning stages, in new developments, carry out inspection surveys of the sites, and monitor the result of satisfaction survey from the tenants. I think it's very, very important. For example, I'm a councillor for Littlemore. There will be lots and lots of new development in Littlemore. The residents are the current residents of Littlemore are very vocal about the new development and can point out a lot of concerns and difficulties that might happen. The roads are too narrow. There's not enough. There won't be enough parking spaces. There's not enough amenities or infrastructure. So it would be very interesting to hear it from the actual tenants from in this new development, what they think about it, and maybe they could shape a bit more the community in which they are going to embed themselves, and probably be even more vocal about perhaps the lack of amenities and maybe more buses and maybe more of these things that are missing at the moment among everything that is being thrown into the mix. So I think it is a very, very important development, and I think it's just, yeah, I would back it completely. Yeah, well done. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Nadine. Before you come back, Simon or Stephen, can I just ask, have we involved tenants today in the choice of any of our development partners? Is that something that we've done? If not, what have been the barriers to doing that today? And is that something that there's plans for in the future?
I mean, what I can respond to that is we had some initial involvement with housing development, potentially about 5 years ago, and that was the kind of post-build exercise, and it was on Denny Gardens and Bradlands when we took some tenants out in a minibus to do kind of surveys, inspections of the completed. I don't want to say the word units, the completed homes, to give their kind of views about the condition and layout. We took the tenants to the BRE, Building Research Institute, with some staff that have kind of true to life model. True to scale housing of different construction, and we took them on a tour to look around that. And we also took them to Stuart Mill in Whitney, which built timber prefab homes, just to get the concept of that. In regards to development, that's all we've done to date. But as discussing, I would like to take that kind of further.
Yeah, Stephen, have we missed something? Because as Simon said, tenant involvement team aren't the only officers of the council working in this area. Is it possible that housing or communities have involved tenants in this area? You on mute, Stephen?
Yeah, apologies for that. Yeah, we've made some progress, but I think that was some while ago, Chair. So I think I would support and welcome Simon's suggestion and Nadine's suggestion that we start to revitalise this. I mean, in terms of detailed design that's, say, coming through the housing company, for example, we do involve a range of internal officer engagement around detailed design, but we've not extended that to tenants. So I think there's a number of opportunities for us to do so. So I think, Simon's recommending that we move that forward. So I would support that. I think there's a good opportunity there, Chair.
Yeah, so I think that's a potential recommendation, Tom, about tenant involvement in housing development at the earliest possible stage. Just related to that, sorry, Liz, I'll come to you afterwards, but just on procurement as well, it's sort of related, but how is it decided which projects tenants are involved with in terms of supporting the procurement process? So there was a big procurement project recently where I think it went through council or cabinet on the lift servicing contracts. Were tenants involved in that? How do we decide what they get involved with?
In all honesty, Chair, it's a case of the more we do it, the more recognised we get. More recognised we become for doing it. So it's a sense of us kind of having our ear to the ground a little bit, and then other teams knowing that we have done it before, and they then recommend to us. So it's kind of there isn't a precise mechanism in place at the moment. But being that I think we've done 2 or 3 this year, and then we've got a 4th one occurring probably in October. And yet again, that's just, you kind of get tenants and leaseholders get known for doing it. And I suppose it's word of mouth.
Stephen, do you think it would be sensible for the council to have a policy where tenants are involved in a procurement process from the housing revenue account for contracts above a certain sensible level that was decided upon?
Yeah, I don't think there's a resistance to it at all. It's just I think Simon's right that we haven't actually got a process to say these contracts are coming up. Which ones would you like to be involved with, tenants? Because it's probably practically not possible to be involved in every one. We probably couldn't support it, but at least if we've got at least we've got a list of contracts coming up, then we can put that choice in front of residents, and they can choose which ones they want to be involved in. I mean, of course, the vast majority of the build programs, of course, run through the housing company as opposed to directly from the council, of course.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. So, Tom, if you could note those, please, as potential recommendation. Thank you. Liz.
Thank you very much, Linda. It's a very impressive initiative. Thank you, David, and all the ambassadors. It's really good to hear from you all. I've just got a question about whether it would be helpful to have an older residents, tenants and leaseholders ambassador. And I'm conscious of that because at the moment I'm trying to get my residents in the Wolvercote ward to fill in a questionnaire. That's fine for younger people, but for older people who don't have access to online, they're just not able to do it unless I walk around with questionnaires in my hand. And I can see the problem that you will have as well, that older people are not necessarily so able to put their points of view forward, which is why I think an ambassador might be helpful. And you've already mentioned Bradlands and taking people out to look at stuff, which is great, but I wondered if we needed a particular ambassador to help to focus that. Okay, that's just my question.
Sorry, just to be clear, is that a particular ambassador to focus on older persons' accommodation, or
older persons' response to their accommodation needs? I think really, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we do. I mean, your point regarding kind of older persons' accommodation and completing the surveys. I think I know we're going to be moving on to the star satisfaction survey later in the month, but I think as part of that we'll be able to provide a breakdown of perhaps the aid ranges that completed the survey, and the reason why I'm saying that, I think because there were different options of the method to carry out that survey. I think we will have captured that audience, but I appreciate consultation generally isn't necessarily the easiest thing to always achieve, and yeah, we have done quite a bit of work with shelter blocks, our shelter blocks over the years, and I would very much like that to continue. So, by no means are they treated any differently than anybody else, and we've done kind of workshops and specific exercises. Projects in the shelter blocks by visiting them and making arrangements. So yeah, I don't want to give the opinion that we exclude elderly residents. That's not the case at all.
No, I'm not suggesting that they're excluded. I'm just wondering if there was an ambassador that would help to focus on that particular section of the tenant population.
Yeah, I'm certainly happy. I'm very open to that. Yes, of course.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Simon, I'm wondering, you mentioned the internal action plan, which will to inform our response to the social housing white paper in your presentation. I'm wondering, is that something this panel might be interested in seeing, or will that all be covered by the report Stephen will be? I can't see Stephen. Has he disappeared?
Stephen's just he gave his apologies. He had to leave.
Will it be covered by the report Stephen will be bringing on the white paper?
Quite possibly. I can have that discussion with Stephen prior to the next meeting. The action plan itself is on a particular piece of software that you wouldn't have access to. And the only way I could do is kind of an extraction of it from this bit of software, probably into Excel, and it would be very, very sizey. And I'm not convinced it would be helpful, but I could certainly maybe put together an abbreviated version or something.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's more the sort of content, summary of the contents we'd be interested in rather than the actual document. But if that's something separate to what Stephen was talking about, when he's talking about bringing a report to this panel, then I think that might be something we want to see alongside that.
More than happy to, Chair, more than happy to.
Any other questions or comments? I've got one about, the council's got the residents panel, which we use to consult residents. It's online, isn't it? Is it a panel of 500 residents or 1,000? I believe it's conducted by Mori for us. Is that something? What's the relationship between the Tenants Involvement team and that? Is that useful? I mean, is there a subset of the residents that we know are tenants that we could consult easily, or should the Tenant Involvement team think about setting up something similar, like an online tenants panel that could be used in a similar way to the residents panel?
Yeah, specifically in regards to the residents panel, I think we've had some difficulties gaining access to that database just generally through GDPR and what tenants have registered and opted in to do. So as head scratching as that may sound, it's quite specific with GDPR that when you register for something specific, and that's what you're contacted on. So we don't have any engagement with that residents panel itself.
There seems a waste that we can't use it to talk to our tenants. But if that's the case, maybe it's something that we need to replicate, within housing services. So yeah, if we could make a note of that, Tom, possibly.
What I can quickly add something that may be of interest, if you like.
Please do.
Just as I was saying, I'm not going into the STAR survey because I'm fully aware that will be covered later down the line. But through the STAR survey, there was a question in there asking tenants and leaseholders if they would like to have more of a say about how their service is delivered, and if so, are they happy for tenant involvement to contact them? We had 420 tenants that said yes, they would. So a member of my team at the moment is literally going around calling every single one of those 420 tenants. So yeah, hopefully that will give us a much wider pool.
Yeah, that sounds like it could lead to something useful. Great. Anyone else want to come in? I mean, it's been really good hearing from the tenant ambassadors. I guess I've got a question just about how many people are trained up to do this work on the procurement and on the appointments panels. Is it just 2 people at the moment? Because it sounds like it's good work, and I'm sure we'd all want to see more people involved in it.
Yes, very good point. Funnily enough, when I met with Gina and Brenda yesterday, I was making reference that there is going to be another tender coming up, and their words themselves were, we'd like to see some new ambassadors join in to this as well, which we absolutely will do, and yeah, we will train them up. So yes, we will. We have had more than two involved in doing it, and there's another tender going on very recently that has about kind of 6 people doing that one. So yeah, we do spread things out.
Were the ambassadors involved in the appointment of the new executive director of Housing and Communities?
No.
Okay, so again, how is it decided which appointments the tenants are involved with?
It's I would say, and being completely honest with you, so if you'd like to make this a recommendation, I'm more than happy. It's a very similar response to the tender in question. It's what we've done in the past and gets known, and us probably having a bit of an ear to the ground.
Yeah. Okay,
so,
thanks for that. So I think possibly we might want to make a recommendation about that, because I'm sure we can all agree that we'd want tenants to be involved in appointments at the highest level. There's no reason why not. Anyone else before I draw this item to a close? It's 8 o'clock.
May I just add, Chair, one more thing is it's extremely important to note that we do focus on accessibility and disability and equality. So not only are we looking at how we get ambassadors involved, we are looking at what type of ambassadors do get involved to make sure that we are checking the work that the council does in terms of its accessibility.
Yeah, thank you, Wendy. That's a really important point. Thank you. Okay, on that, let's conclude that item. So it's just one more item, and that's item 7, the dates of next meetings. They're there in the agenda: 6th of October, 4th of November, 2nd of February, and 4th of April. And as chair, I was consulted about whether we meet in real life or whether we continue online. And I've agreed with officers that we will continue to meet online. I think it does the job perfectly well. I think we've had a good meeting this evening. And it's certainly more convenient for me as someone with kids. So I hope that is okay with everybody. Yeah, good. Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you so much to all the tenant ambassadors for coming. So tenant involvement and empowerment, we're going to be talking about that at all of our meetings over the next year. So I want to extend a standing, an open invitation to you really to come along. Don't feel you have to come. I know that this isn't everyone's idea of fun and you've got busy lives. But I do want you to have an open invitation, to be here in this space while we're discussing these issues. So, if you do want to chip in and, have a say, then you're able to. So, thank you so much for coming. Yeah, thank you very much, everyone. Good night. See you at the next one.